Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.
Welcome to Football Then and Now, episode 37. As you can see, Mr. Stewie Palmer is not with us today. And for once, I'm here. I'm here with close friend and friend of the show, Brady. We're not talking about Villa this time, so hopefully it'll be a bit nicer, on the climax of being an Evertonian, having to see a team that were close to us do so much better than, where we are, and we've fallen considerably. But we'll start off some news breaks. We've had a hiring, a sacking, and potentially another hiring. We'll go with Steve Cooper first. I just want to know your thoughts on Steve Cooper's sacking, or did you feel he was the right man to be hired before obviously he got the sack?
I think for what Leicester needed at the time, for his experience, both Championship and Premiership, I think he was the right person. I don't think there was anybody else out there, apart from maybe like the likes of David Moyes, but would David Moyes want it after how he was treated by West Ham and doing as much as what he did? Maybe he wanted time out and didn't want it, but I think Steve Cooper I think they let him go a bit too soon. I don't think they gave him enough time because they didn't really spend in the summer. Not that much. A lot of the players, they'd stayed with him when they went down, managed to keep hold of a lot of them when they went down, played in the Championship, came back up, but they just haven't got the players to do it in the Premiership. I mean, Jamie Vardy, he's had his day. Still a good player, but he's had his day. And I think they've just lost their core, and I think a lot of results didn't go their way. I mean, those stats there, 3 wins, 3 wins, 7 draws, 7 losses.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad of a return for him, to be honest, for what he's got. But to sack him now and to bring Van Nistelrooy in, who isn't an experienced manager, risky.
It's a difficult one because, he's only had a couple of games under United as caretaker, and I thought, he did good enough at the time because United obviously having a situation where things aren't going great on the pitch. There's a lot of stuff going on in the back, the background of United, which is causing a lot of problems, and you can see the constraint with the managers they've had previously, because you got to look at the managers they've had. These are world-class managers. They've won things in many places, but yet they go to United and things just don't work out for them. I always seem to think that there's so much going on in the background at certain clubs, and I can say that for, Everton being, constant, in disarray in, the backgrounds of it, which has caused a lot of trouble, on the pitch. But, he did a good job when he came there. He beat Leicester, didn't he? In the Cup, I think it was 4-2. And he did a great job at PSV. You only have to look at Jarrod Branthwaite and how well he performed with PSV. He earned his place there. He had to wait, I think a couple of months before he broke into the PSV first team squad, but that was under Van Nistelrooy, and he cemented his spot then. So he's got an eye for talent. He knows, the right and wrongs of players, to use, and I think this is probably a good start for him. I think he was never going to get the United job. I think the whole Solskjaer experiment, as much as it had its ups, it had a very much downs as well, didn't it? I think United sort of didn't want to go down that route, and it's finding a young enough manager, but still, it managed in European competitions, and you're seeing that now with Ruben. Obviously, 1-1 against Ipswich isn't the greatest of start, but they didn't lose, and you can see what he wants from the team going forward. I think for Van Nistelrooy, if he gets a good a good group around him. I don't know who he'll bring as coaches and staff to Leicester because I'm not sure obviously who he had at PSV. I know obviously Marcel Brands was there, who was from Everton's director of football, but obviously that would go there. But I think it's a good start for him. I think he can get his claws in, and hopefully they'll give him some money in January, to go out and get who he wants. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place for him to to learn. I think
Well, he's got nothing to lose though, has he? Really?
No, but he's been a manager before, so
Yeah. The
and
thing is, worst comes to worst, they go down, they keep him in charge. He gets rid of the players that he doesn't want, builds a team that he wants, and tries to get back into the Premiership. Gives him more experience, gets the players that he wants. But you never know; he could get them firing on all cylinders and flying up the league.
Yeah, and it's very possible. I think probably more so the idea for Leicester once obviously Van Nistelrooy takes over. Obviously, that's not been officially announced yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's on the verge. I think it'd be consolidate, wouldn't it, with Leicester this season and just try and keep them out of the relegation zone, keep them up this season, and maybe look for next season to build, his style, the players he wants, because January transfer windows usually it's a very difficult window, isn't it? With not many teams want to spend money, and not a lot of teams will spend money because PSR, as you saw more so last January, actually, a lot of teams pulled back from really signing anybody, apart from Chelsea. But Chelsea can spend and do whatever they want. Jokes, but I feel like going into next season, Van Nistelrooy will have a better, clear path of what he wants. He's just going to have to use and utilize what he has now, and maybe forcing some youth players. You've seen players come through Leicester, young players that have gone on to further careers. I mean, Ben Chilwell, okay, not so much at Chelsea now because of injuries, but he was highly prospect and he was touted. He did move to Chelsea.
Hall, he's Chelsea, but apparently the manager there now doesn't like him. So
Maresca, a lot of players at Chelsea, to be honest with you, though. It could work out, I'd say, for Dewsbury Hall at some point. There's a talented player in there, I think. So I think that it will come around for him. But for Van Nistelrooy taking over Leicester, no, I think it's a good shout for him, and it's a good starting point.
Yeah,
I mean, he can do well here and get Leicester a decent spot in the Premier League. We're looking at maybe top half of the bottom half of the Premier League, and then he builds. There'll be a lot of people, a lot of teams, will see that and come back, and maybe you'll get a bigger job after it. It's possible. All it could, drop down on his face, and it doesn't work out. There are a few managers who have world-class players that we've seen currently that it hasn't really worked out. I'll name Wayne Rooney for one of them, which is sad to see, but has not worked out at Plymouth for him. I don't know how he's still in the job, but it just hasn't does not seem to click for him there. He had it going at Derby, but I think there were different circumstances and everyone was fighting, for survival with Derby.
Yeah.
Birmingham was just I'd say it's a shit show what happened there. Or go on to Frank Lampard, who is today being announced as Coventry City's manager. Obviously, I can tell you from my experience as Frank Lampard being a manager of Everton, lovely guy. He got the club, understood the supporters, but I think that tactically he wasn't there for us, and I don't think that we were the right fit for someone who is still learning on the job. Okay, he did okay for Derby, but I think he spent a lot of money at Derby with loans as well. But put Derby in the position they were when Wayne Rooney and Philip Cocu were there. But I feel like Nistelrooy's got a good starting point there, and I'll obviously sideways now to Frank Lampard in Coventry. You saw him as a manager, as an outsider, as a Villa fan. You've seen him at Chelsea. We saw him have a really good season with Chelsea. The first season he took over, and they couldn't spend any money, and he blooded in all these young players, the Mason Mounts, Tomores, Reece James. His second season didn't go to plan. He got sacked. He dwindled away for a bit, didn't he? He came back to Premier League with Everton. And as I said, he was great with the fans. He got the club, just didn't know tactically what to do. And obviously, it ended up we sacking him. He's now at Coventry. Obviously, Tim Robbins was there for a long, long time. Now he's moved on. Do you feel like this is a good starting point, or is this the last starting point now for Frank Lampard?
I think Lampard did well for Derby for the problems they were going through at the time. He had the connections with Chelsea and with West Ham. So he was getting a lot of players in on loan who probably could have been getting on the bench and having some games for the Premiership teams, for the Chelseas and for the West Hams. I mean, his tactics, from what I saw, because obviously Villa were in the Championship same time when Lampard was at Derby, so I saw a lot of their games as well. And I've seen, obviously, how he did for Everton and how he did for Chelsea. I think Coventry's a good fit for him. They've got a good bunch of players there. There's talk of a new stadium. They seem to be more solid now than what they have been in recent years. Obviously, with money and everything, they were having to pay rent on the Rico Arena.
Yeah, I remember that.
With the council owned. So I think it's a good, I wouldn't say last start for it. I think it could be, I wouldn't want to say shit or bust. I think it's a good fit for him. I think the Premiership is what at the moment is one step too far for him.
I
mean, from what I've seen, he's a nice guy and everything. Like I said, loves the young players. I just think tactically, he's more of a Championship manager than he is a Prem manager at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's a good shout. He's obviously experienced the Premier League with two clubs. Obviously, he's already experienced the Championship with Derby. Coventry, as you said, they've got a solid team. Don't forget, they've been in the playoffs not long ago. They have been battling the top half of the league. I think, I agree, this is perfect for him to commit to a style and maybe spend a bit longer at the club, making it a Lampard, esque club. They play how he wants to. He liked to pass the ball. He liked to maneuver the midfield, and how the likes of, say, City played. He liked that sort of style, the sort of Gengen press with a bit of ticky-tacky. He liked that. It just didn't work at Everton because we didn't have the players for it. I mean, going back to Derby, and you saying obviously he was managing Derby at the same time Villa in the Championship. Do you feel like, though, going at and looking at that team he had at Derby, he should have been promoted with the players? The Mason Mounts were there, if I remember rightly. I think Tomori was there, and I think a few other Chelsea loanees were there. The players that he then eventually blooded into the Chelsea squad when he became the manager. Do you think he should have done better with the players he had at Derby?
I think for what he had at Derby, because a lot of the players were young players. They were 18, 19, 20 years old. Didn't really have much first-team experience with their parent clubs. I think playoffs were right for him. I don't think he should have been running away with it or coming second, because the teams that did finish first and second that year, I remember who it was now, but I think the playoffs were right for him. I mean, if he gets into Coventry and gets them playing how he wants, I mean, we've all seen it before. A team can go from the bottom end of the table to playoffs within a couple of months, really, if results go their way. And I think he's got the connections. If he gets his team around him again that he had at Chelsea and that he had at Everton, I mean, he's got a lot of friends that he can bring in that know the game. He's got a lot of experience that he can call on. What was I reading the other day? Somebody was saying that he might call on John Terry to go in as his assistant manager.
I think it'll be Chris Jones again. I think, it'd be Joe Edwards and Chris Jones that will go with him to Coventry.
More than likely, but it's just all these things getting thrown around. I think he'll do well at Coventry. If he doesn't get promoted this season, he's got a good push to get promoted next season. I think it is a good fit for him. I don't think he'll go and call on Chelsea as much as what he did when he was at Derby. I think he'll want to try and do it on his own.
Yeah.
So I think Coventry have got probably the right person for them there as well, because they like to watch their football. They don't like park the bus, 1-0, we'll sit there and take it. Lampard, as he used to as a player for Chelsea and for City, never settled for 1-0, never settled for 2-0. Always wanted to be 3 or 4 up to know that he was safe, which is how he tried to bring into management, but realised when he was at Derby in the Championship, you might have to settle for the 1-0s.
Yeah.
But still play some good football. So I think the Coventry fans, they might not get behind him at the moment, but don't judge a book by the cover. I think there is a good manager there. He's got some good background behind him. He's got people he can call on. I mean, to have Harry Redknapp to call on.
Yeah, and it's not a bad experienced manager there for some advice, is there?
No.
Harry Redknapp's been there and done it all.
I mean, like I said, I think it's the right fit for both. For Coventry and for Lampard, it's the right fit. For Lampard to get back into management in the Championship, they're not doing too bad. Couple of games. As long as he's got the fans behind him, because we all know what fans from the Midlands area can be like. Once they turn, you're gone. But if you can get them on your side, you've got a 12th man there every week in, week out, home and away. So I think good luck to him, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think fans will get behind him. What he does well is he'll learn about the club.
Yeah, which you rarely ever see managers or coaches do these days.
No.
They're there for the money.
No.
They're there for what can I make out of this? And
for their own reputation, really.
I mean, especially when you go into, I don't want to say the Championship is a lower league, because we all know it's not. I mean, it's not the standard of the Premiership, but it's in the top 5 most watched leagues in Europe.
I think it's around about top 7, but yeah, it's not an easy league. It is a rough league.
So
you've been there, you've seen it. So, I mean, you're more experienced than I.
I mean, you've got to have somebody who is for the club, is for the fans. If they're going in, especially in the Championship, if they're going in there, right, I'm doing it my way, this, that, the other, I don't care what the fans think, don't care, you're not going to get it. You're going to fail at the first hurdle. Where if you've got somebody like Lampard who is for the fans, is for the club, does his research, looks at how to get the fans on side again, then they'll be like peas in a pod. They'll love each other.
Yeah. Well, let's hope this time around for Frank Lampard, he can settle with the team. He's given the time to establish his style of play. And, we wish him luck because he's a nice guy. We don't hate him at Everton. We liked him at Everton. It's just the football just wasn't for us. His style wasn't for us. But, more on Everton as things establish with the takeover. And I think, we'll talk about Everton more so when that happens because at the moment, it's dire enough to talk about. So I'd rather talk positive things. I'm going to go and do my usual, and that is my on this day, Brady. I haven't told you what I've picked. But I thought this one was a fantastic one. For the history and the historic moments that the Premier League has had, the players that have come through the Premier League, the players that have been brought in the Premier League, and there's no person better than a player that gone through non-league all the way up to the Premiership. He's won a Premier League's medal, he's won an FA Cup's medal, he's played in the Champions League, but he also holds record. And that is Jamie Vardy. On this day, he scored the record 11th goal in a row. And I think, that as a striker is phenomenal. Yeah. I just think, in this current climate, it's difficult to even get, three or four goals in a game, let alone scoring 11 on the trot. But obviously we know that season with Leicester, they won the league.
Yep.
But you look at the goals there and the teams he played. 2 against Arsenal. You're looking at 2 against Southampton. His goal against United, and you just saw how prolific he was in that season. He had Mahrez with him. Obviously, he had. I think Kante was there, wasn't he? N'Golo Kante, and they had a solid team. And Robert Hoof, I remember being at the back as well, and he was like colossal.
Yeah, Robert Hoof, Wes Morgan.
Yeah, Wes Morgan, the captain.
Kasper Schmeichel in goal. Was it Fuchs at left back or right back?
Yeah, Fuchs was there.
Yeah, I mean, you looked at the players that they had round them. And a lot of them you'd never heard of. Nobody had really heard of Jamie Vardy before coming into the Premiership because...
Not really, because in the season before, don't forget, they only just stayed up. And I think if you looked at the season before they won the league, I was more excited for seeing Esteban Cambiasso play in the Premier League because obviously he's one of those players I loved growing up. And he was fantastic for the age he was at Leicester when he was there for that one season. But yeah, he didn't really, I can't remember who was playing up front for Leicester this season. They almost got relegated. But you didn't see much of James Vardy. Obviously, this season we're talking about now when they won the league. You're right. Who heard of N'Golo Kante at that time? Nobody. Riyad Mahrez. I mean, these players obviously went on to Chelsea and City and have won a fair bit since then. Jamie Vardy, respectfully, has stayed at Leicester and still currently is at Leicester. Could have gone to Arsenal, the rumour was, the season after this one. But you got to admire the tenacity of Jamie Vardy, the pace always got him past, the aggressiveness, and he also scored all sorts of different goals. It wasn't just a poacher, nicking
that one against, was it Liverpool over the shoulder?
That season as well, yeah. I think it's about 25 yards, wasn't it? Or maybe 30 yards.
Well, didn't he take the record off? Was it Van Nistelrooy?
Yeah.
So he'll be winding Van Nistelrooy up when he walks through the door.
Yeah, and like I say, we go back to Van Nistelrooy. Yeah, you agree with you with Vardy's getting on, but what a player for experience and the experience he's had with Leicester, with everything they've gone through from, as I said, winning the Premier League, the FA Cup, getting relegated, getting back into the Premier League. He's been there and done it all. He's pretty much played in every league in the English pyramid, almost. But he's played in, all sorts of different squads of Leicester, the different change of managers, the players they brought in. But a great player you can heavily rely on for a bit of help
Well, the thing is, it wasn't just club. He was doing it for England as well, really, wasn't he? I mean, yeah, they had Harry Kane, and me and Stu went into about the England squad last time with Harry Kane, and if Harry Kane's not fit, they try something else and they never start a striker. But Jamie Vardy had something different because of his pace.
Mm-hmm.
He could play anywhere, and he's that type of player where if you need him to go in goal, he'd probably jump in goal for you.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Yeah,
he's a fan favourite. Every Leicester fan that I know absolutely love Jamie Vardy because he's stuck by the club, because the club's stuck by him. For everything he's gone through, I mean, was it Fleetwood they got him from?
I think it was Fleetwood, yeah.
Because I think before Fleetwood signed him, he was playing 2 tiers below the conference, I think it was. I'm working in a factory. And I went to Fleetwood, and then I think it was 1 season at Fleetwood, and then went to Leicester.
I can get that up for you now, Brady, and we can have a look. You can't. I don't know. It's like a player of his quality. That's one of a kind. I think, really, considering the clubs he had to go through. I think a lot of players who play in the lower league don't get that opportunity to come to the Premier League and really establish themselves.
No, a lot of the time now it's the other way around. Players have already played in the Premiership and start dropping down the divisions. I mean, you look at like James McLean at Wrexham.
Yeah,
played in the Premiership, played in the Championship, is now in League One with Wrexham.
That's it. Yeah,
and there's a couple of others. Stephen Fletcher.
Yeah, came to Blackburn from Scotland. Highly touted at the time because he was scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah,
in Scotland, but yeah, he's at Wrexham as well, isn't he?
Yeah,
well, he was. Yeah, but Charlie Austin's down there as well.
Yeah, so like you see the players dropping from the Premiership down, but you rarely see a lot of players. I mean, you'll see players go from the Championship to the Premiership.
Yeah,
I mean, we see that all the time and do well. Like Morgan for us, he's doing well for us. But then you've seen other players who've done really well in the Championship come to the Premiership and just can't do it. Where, like you said, Jamie Vardy's been through pretty much, I think it is every tier of the Football League.
I can tell you from looking at his profile, he started in the NPL Division 1, and that was back in 2005-2006 season. And that was with Stockbridge Park Steels.
Yeah.
Which you're looking at like a local league before they get up to like the conferences when they battle it all out. He then went on to play for Halifax Town. He was there for 2 seasons, and he played in the NPL Premier League and then the Conference North, which would have been the Conference North, which would be now the Vanarama. You got the North and the South, haven't you?
Yeah.
He then went to Fleetwood, then to the Conference Premier League, which will be the Vanarama National League.
Yeah.
And then he plays in the Championship with Fleetwood, and then it's Leicester pretty much then. Well, I think.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm wrong there. He went to Fleetwood and played 1 season of Conference, Brady, and went straight to the Championship with Leicester.
I mean, fair dues. Leicester's scouts obviously saw something and thought he was going to be good enough to do that sort of jump because, I mean, you've seen it on, if you've been watching Welcome to Wrexham. I mean, you look at what Phil Parkinson says on that, like the difference just from the Conference to League 2 is big enough as it is. But for somebody to go all the way from the Conference to the Championship, that's one hell of a jump. But he put the work in, the effort in, and it's paid off for him. I mean, like you've shown, he's broken records.
Won trophies.
Won trophies. He's got, is it 10 England caps?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think he got many. Oh no, here you go. He got 26 caps and he scored 7 goals. His most capped year was in 2006, where he got 10 caps and scored 5 goals for England. But obviously, he retired after the Euros in 2018, didn't he?
Yeah. But for a player like that, I think, just going back to Van Nistelrooy again, you'd have him on your coaching staff. If he's not playing as much, because you don't see him as much at the moment, I mean, it might change when Van Nistelrooy goes in.
Possibly.
But if you're seeing him come to his twilight years, you'd want to get him in as part of your coaching staff or working with the youngsters, with your under 18s or under 17s or even the under 21s, just because he pretty much is like Mr. Leicester.
Yeah.
And you'd want somebody like that around the club, just to take a couple of youngsters under his wing and say, right, if you do this, then it could lead to this. Or you've done that wrong, or just tweak this and you'll be a lot sharper. He's just, from what I've seen, he's just a genuinely really nice guy, doesn't take anything for granted, plays with his heart on his sleeve, and I don't think anybody else deserves it more than he did breaking that record.
Well, not in that season. You know what I mean? He was terrific. And, you know, he has that memorable line, didn't he? Chat shit, get banged, which, you know, was fantastic. And, you know, he liked a bottle of Wicked, didn't he? So,
a bottle of Wicked and a can of Red Bull before coming onto the pitch.
Yeah, well, you know, everyone's different, I guess. Mixture of that, like. But, yeah, no, from that, fantastic. You know, that's something we're going to see. Can it be broken again in future seasons? I don't think it's going to be broken.
No.
You know, Haaland might be the guy, but then I think Haaland is more of a quantity striker, not a consistent bang every game. But then, who knows? He's still young enough to break many records. He was close enough in his first season, you know, to beat Dixie Dean, which people disagree with because obviously the era where Dixie Dean scored the 60 goals in a season. But you know that is history, and you know, that is a record that still stands, you know, and a record that we're very proud of. But then, you know, as you say, he's still consistent now. I think he's got 4 goals in the Premier League this season. You know, and he's in his mid-30s. I think, he's in his mid-30s. I think he's 38, isn't it? No, he's, I think, he's 38 because he's a year younger than us. And give him credit. There's not a lot of players striker-wise that, you know, hang around and especially manage to stay in the top flight football at that age. Goalkeepers can play a bit longer than most outfield players.
Yeah.
But for a striker to remain fit enough and, you know, score goals as well, I think is fantastic. And he still changes the game when he comes on. He's maybe not as fast as he used to be, but he still causes havoc. He's still got that tactical nous. He knows when to shift the ball. You know what I mean? And he still gets in the right positions. He scored 18 goals last season for Leicester in the Championship. So there's still fire in the old dog yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. He
has got a lot to offer, even if he's not starting. Yeah. I mean, players are still going to see him when he's coming on thinking, what am I going up against?
Yeah.
Especially if you've had a player on before him who's already run that defence ragged. I mean, Vardy might not be as quick as what he used to be, but he's still got some pace on him.
He knows how to score a goal. You know what I mean? You don't forget that.
No.
Well, that was enough about Jamie Vardy, Brady, because I feel like at this point it's our major topic of the day. Now, me and Brady spoke yesterday and we spoke about the topic. And Brady came up with the best 11 from the past to present. Now, there is no rules. You could go for a full 11 that's in the past, or you could go for a full 11 in the present. I'm going to give Brady's team first because seeing as I'm the host, I'm in charge. So I'm not going to throw my team out immediately. But I'll put this caption here. Just a quick one. I need to take it off because for some reason it blocks the goalkeeper's name out. So I'm going to take this one out as well. And hopefully I pick on yours and not mine. Yours is red. I'd never pick red. But Brady, I'm going to pull your team up now. From goalkeeper to defender to wingers and onwards. Just explain your decision. What made you pick them? Is there any highlights of these players that you remember that inspired you to pick them?
I mean, I've gone with Emi Martinez in goal, just for pretty much what he's done for Villa and Argentina since he came to us from Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for a player to win the best goalkeeper in the world 2 years in a row, that's very difficult, especially in this day and age for a goalkeeper who's not playing for one of the big clubs week in, week out in Europe, winning leagues, winning Champions Leagues. For somebody to do that, who Arsenal didn't think were good enough at the time.
Madness.
I mean, there is a lot of good goalkeepers now and in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, I nearly went with Schmeichel for what he did at United.
He played for you as well, don't forget.
Scored for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart mentioned that. He was the first goalkeeper in the Premier League to score, and that was against us as well.
I mean, Van der Sar, Brad Friedel,
Yeah.
Hugo Lloris for Tottenham.
Mm.
You could go on. I mean, there's so many keepers, but I just think, for me, at the moment, Emi Martinez, I mean, people will disagree and say Allison or Emerson or Pickford. But for me, Emi's my number one.
He's solid. Solid goalkeeper.
Yeah. Right back, I've gone with Seamus Coleman.
Hey.
And I think because of what he's done for Everton, I mean, he was always consistent. He's stuck with the club through everything. He could have retired 2 or 3 seasons ago, but stayed to help.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
And I mean, we spoke before coming on live. There's a few that I could have gone with. Another one would have been Mr. Utility himself, Phil Neville.
Another former Blue, yeah. Played for United as well. Manager, I think, Portland Timbers in the MLS.
Yes. Is he? Yeah. Yeah, he is now, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, people could say like Kyle Walker, but I just think Seamus Coleman, for what he's done at Everton, from where he came from, because you got him direct from the Irish League, didn't you?
60 grand. You know the chant.
So that's why I've gone with him at right back. Back to Vidic. People say Ferdinand was better than Vidic. I just think Vidic was Mr. Solid.
He was. Yeah.
He was consistent. Ferdinand could go and do what he wanted, but Vidic would always be there. I just thought for the defenders you could go with, there's been a lot of good defenders. And I mean, we spoke before as well. Tony Adams,
Yeah.
Steve Staunton. The list is endless for central defenders.
And currently as well, Brady, there's a lot of good defenders currently that you could easily have popped in there.
Yeah. And I mean, I've gone with John Terry next to him because John Terry, same as Vidic, just Mr. Consistent. No frills, just threw himself at everything. And never whinged, never moaned, just got up and carried on.
And scored some goals as well. So currently, Brady, your two centre backs would be quite ruthless come corners or set pieces. Well, free kicks, corners, or set pieces. But yeah, I you can't knock John Terry. He was, fantastic for Chelsea for all those years. And
I mean, he was
solid
brilliant for us when he came down to the Championship for us. He was brilliant for us. Still a solid player. And I mean, dropping from winning titles with Chelsea down to the Championship to play with us, a lot of people thought, "What the hell's he doing?" And he admitted he wanted to try his hand at something else. He played at the highest level, and he wanted to try and see if he could still do it week in, week out, playing at least 2 games a week, and he did.
And he stayed, didn't he? After he retired,
he stayed. Yeah, he joined on the management team. He did pretty well at the management. I'm surprised he's not gone into management himself yet to be an actual manager or coach, but he'll get there at some point.
I think he's
good enough.
I think he's Chelsea's under-18s manager. I think he did go back to Chelsea, and I think, and because I think he was there. I think that was his place was going to be before he obviously went to yourself when you played the Championship. I think that was his pathway that Chelsea offered him. But obviously, as you say, he loved football. He wanted to play, and he felt like he wasn't finished. And he tried his hand in the Championship.
It worked, and then he came after this play.
You got to look at. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And he's a talent. He was talented, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, then left back Ashley Cole, and I can't see too many arguments off people for that. But what he did at Arsenal, and then what he did at Chelsea, and what he did for England, he was good going forward. Bit shaky now and again on the defensive side, but I mean, I could have gone with. I mean, there was Dennis Irwin.
Yeah.
Luca Digne's been phenomenal for us for the past few seasons. He was good for you guys. Andy Robertson for Liverpool. The list's endless for that, for left back as well. But I just think Ashley Cole, I don't think anybody could go above him, to be honest.
I think,
in my eyes.
I think, for the years that he played in the Premier League for Arsenal and Chelsea, he was very consistent. And Chelsea, really, even though there was a bit of hoo-ha, wasn't it, when he went to Chelsea? Because it was I think it was only like $6 million they paid for Ashley Cole that season they bought him. But he was consistent, and I think he was the best left back. I'll have an argument with that in my team, but I'll get to that point when I throw my team out there. But he was arguably one of the best left backs in Premier League history. He was probably the best left back for England, because you got to look at it since Ashley Cole's obviously retired and moved into coaching and what have you. There hasn't really been a decent enough left back to fill the void that Ashley Cole had for England. And he was consistent. The amount of times he played Ronaldo out of game when Ronaldo was on the wing for United, and there was quite a fair bit of times he did. I don't argue your choice there. Ashley Cole is, like I say, he was one of the best.
Yeah. Moving into midfield, Kevin De Bruyne. That guy. I mean, this season, he's had a lot of injuries, but what he's done for City, what he did at Wolfsburg, you give that guy the ball, he's gonna get goals. He's gonna set people up. I mean, him and Haaland last season, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a one of a kind. Another one that Chelsea bought and disregarded. Well, Jose Mourinho's style, but I can't complain with that pick either, Brady. I think Kevin De Bruyne is fantastic with the manipulation of a ball. He can, as you say, he can pick a pass fantastically, and if those sort of passes he picks, some players in the world cannot choose to pass the way he can. I think Odegaard is very close to the way that Kevin De Bruyne can pass a ball. I think Odegaard's right up there. Kevin De Bruyne can pick a pass through an eye of a needle, and you just think, how's he done that? Where's he thought about where that space is? He's incredible. His IQ on the pitch is
ridiculous.
One of the best. One of the best as a midfielder.
And David Silva, that guy, at City. A lot of people probably hadn't heard of him before he went to City, but he would just pop up anywhere. You'd forget he was on the pitch sometimes. He'd just literally pop up and get an assist or get a goal. He was just that good for City. I mean,
He was.
And then I've gone with Ryan Giggs as well, who was Mr. Man United. I think he was, up until he retired, he was the only player to have scored in every season of the Premier League.
Yeah, and that's a massive
And
record.
he didn't retire till he was 39, was it? Or 40?
I think he was close to 40, but obviously he wanted that manager role, didn't he? So I think he took the caretaker job, but obviously he didn't get it in the end. But, he was very briefly Wales manager, wasn't he? Unfortunately, with circumstances, obviously, we can't talk about. But Ryan Giggs is a staple of the Premier League. I remember, he scored his first goal against us in the early 90s. But he used to rip people apart on that left wing. He used to rip everyone apart. The goal against Arsenal in the FA Cup always comes to mind because it was the skill, the strength. And Arsenal had a fantastic team, don't forget, back then. I'm not saying they don't now, but back then, they were unbelievable. But he's ripped through that left, and he smashed it top left corner, and it was quite a difficult angle as well. Yeah, fantastic footballer. What he could do with a ball, I remember watching him as a kid, and you were in awe.
Yeah, he'd probably be the one left-sided player that England would have always loved.
Yeah, and he was an England schoolboy, don't forget, before actually he chose to go with Wales. England would have loved him, I think. England got hold of Ryan Giggs, when Ryan Giggs was in his peak, could have been a different story for England.
Well, they wouldn't be crying about 66 as much, would they?
Well, they did win it, so, they can't cry too much. Just haven't won anything since. Reminds me of a football club I support, actually. But
I've gone with a 4-3-3 because there's too many strikers and forwards that you could put in. I mean, I've gone with two Arsenals, Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry. Bergkamp, what he could do with a ball. I mean, that goal against Newcastle, case in point.
Oh, yeah.
Henry,
beautiful.
Going from Juve to Arsenal, being a left-sided winger at Juve to being thrown up top by Arsene Wenger, changed his career. And I could have gone with, we spoke before, I could have gone with Gaza instead of Bergkamp.
Yeah.
I could have gone with Aguero instead of Henry, but I just think Aguero was very direct. Henry, he had the skill, the pace, and the power. I mean, Aguero, for what he did, he broke records and things for City and in the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
For a very unknown player, but I had to go with Henry. But back in the day, when he came over, when we were a lot younger than what we are, I just think you didn't really see a player like that at that time.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
And then up top, Alan Shearer,
Mr. Premier League himself.
That guy, he was just no frills, threw himself at everything. Just loved playing football. And I think...
And still holds a lot of records now, Brady.
For what he did at Blackburn, winning the league in 95, was it? 94 or 95? and then
Mm-hmm. No, 95, 96 it was.
And then going to Newcastle and staying at Newcastle for as long as he did, managing them and everything. I just thought, you can't leave Shearer out.
No,
I mean, like I said, there's a lot of players that I could have put in mine, that you could have put in yours. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
I nearly went with Ian Wright.
Yeah, Ian Wright again. Loved him. He was like an earlier Henry, but not as talented, and that's no disrespect to Ian Wright, because Henry was out of this world, but he was, a cheeky striker. Was
I mean, the rivalry
Ian Wright,
Ian Wright and Peter Schmeichel had.
Yeah, I do remember.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I don't think they hated each other. I just think they hated playing each other.
Well, Arsenal and United have always had, back then, not so much now, because obviously United have, on hard times. They were the rivalry. It was Arsenal and United. They were the two teams that, battled for the Premier League, every season. You look at Liverpool was always there, but they didn't have the money, where Arsenal and United just built players upon players. And I think, you've got to look at the players they had around them. Alan Shearer, when we go back to him, do you think, and obviously I know Newcastle's is blood, it's something.
He always said he wanted to play for Newcastle.
Did he make a mistake the season he went, and could he have maybe gone to United? No, you don't think his career might have been a bit, obviously it would have been different, but people would talk about him more because he would have won trophies. He went to Newcastle,
he wasn't about the trophies. He's always admitted he wasn't about the trophies. He just wanted to play his football. He always wanted to play for Newcastle. And I remember seeing an interview with him years ago where somebody asked him the same question. Do you ever regret not going to United and signing for Newcastle instead, where you could have won trophies and got your name up in lights? And he just turned around and went, I always wanted to play for Newcastle. The offer came in and I've got my name up in lights at Newcastle.
Yeah, you can't. No, I don't disagree with you. I would have liked to seen him win a few trophies, obviously, because he's one of the most decorated strikers to ever play in the Premier League, and by God, he could hit a shot. He was phenomenal in the case of, like, the guy could hit 25, 30 yards, spectacularly go in. Or he could be in the box and he'd be there, poaching in. He was fantastic on penalties. He hardly missed. There was only a very small, I think, penalties he did miss in percentage-wise. But yeah, I can't disagree with your team, Brady. But I'm going to say mine is better. And I'll give you the reasons why. I just feel that mine's a bit more pacier and solid at the back, solid in midfield.
Go on,
Are you ready? This is my formation's different to yours. There are players in there that obviously have mixed with past and present, just because of the jobs that they do and have done, before they retired or they're still playing now. I'll give you my reasons for each player. Obviously, challenge me if you feel like they're not what you would feel. So obviously, I've gone with Edward van der Sar, Dutch legend, fantastic at Ajax, fantastic at Juve. Went to Fulham, wasn't so good, but Fulham at the time, I think in the early 2000s, were very much a yo-yo club. So I was very surprised when he went to Fulham from Juve. Obviously, United then snapped him up, and he was fantastic for United. I don't think any goalkeeper since Schmeichel or Van der Sar have been better for Man United. I think Van der Sar holds the record for the longest clean sheets as a goalkeeper in the Premier League, and it's over 1,000 minutes.
Yeah, I think it is.
It just goes to, he just goes to show how good Van der Sar was. And don't forget, he was a big goalkeeper, but he could get across that goal, super quick for a long goalkeeper. I know you'd say, oh, well, as long as you'd be able to reach, but it's not always about size. It's getting there. He was fantastic. Obviously, still in the game now. I think he's in the back room of Ajax.
Not
I
director
remember.
of football. Is he? He might be director of football now.
I think he was technical director. Yeah. There was a lot of them that was still there. I think director of football was Mark Overmars, if you remember rightly, from Arsenal. Their director of football at one point. But yeah, I feel like you picked Martinez as current, which I think is a solid pick because I highly rate Martinez. And you do look at Arsenal sometimes and think, why did you ever sell him? You didn't need to buy all these goalkeepers. You had already made one there. With Van der Sar, I think Ferguson saw obviously the history of Van der Sar and what he produced before Fulham at the Juve and Ajax as a younger lad. And I think as Van der Sar got older, I think he got better.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
But it's been the same for a lot of goalkeepers. I mean, like I said, I could have gone with Van der Sar in mine. I just feel like with what Martinez has done the past few seasons, he just sort of picked him a little bit. But yeah, Van der Sar has always been. Even I thought he was a good keeper at Fulham, and for the amount United paid for him, it wasn't a lot. I don't think.
No.
And I mean, United had a very good defence, but some of the saves that Van der Sar pulled off at United won them titles.
Yeah, I can't disagree on that. I can't. And he won, trophies in Europe with United as well.
So I wouldn't disagree with your pick on that one.
So I'm going to go to right back. This is going to be very controversial for a lot of people who know me. You obviously do, Brady, so I can see the smirk. But there's reasons for it. I do like the attacking side of Trent Alexander. Alex Arnold. His word. See, it's me picking a Liverpool player. It's like I can't get out my mouth. But the reason I picked Trent is going forward. He's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And the ball's in. The movement he can betray on that right hand side is fantastic. What he can do with the ball is brilliant. Maybe not so defending wise. I think he's still got to learn a lot of stuff going when he's having to defend and positioning because he does get caught out a bit and sometimes he's not strong enough against wingers. But going forward, you can't knock the player. I saw the imagination that Liverpool fans and Klopp had moving him into that midfield, like Philip Lahm did when Philip Lahm was a bit older, and just slotted right in because he was a great a passer of a ball. He can manipulate a ball like Trent can. Not yet. I just don't think it's his time to move into midfield. Maybe as he gets a bit older and more experienced, that's a good role for him to go eventually.
It's like Gareth Barry. He moved from left back to central midfield and played for a lot longer. And Trent will do the same. Whether he moves to right wing for a little bit, then moves more central. At the moment, picking up too many niggly injuries. I mean, he was out. Was it last night Liverpool played or the night before?
They played last night against Real Madrid and beat them badly.
I know he was out for that because they had a youngster, Bradley, who was playing at right back.
Connor Bradley. He's another good one. I think Liverpool got that.
So I think if Liverpool wanted to move Trent further forward or into midfield, into the central role, they've got a perfect replacement for him already. I mean, Bradley's very young, but from what I saw of the highlights for what he was doing against Mbappe, I think Trent would be able to move more forward and not have to think more about the defensive side. He could just focus on the more attacking side in a lot of games. So I can't really argue with that pick either. But yeah,
You're gonna say but somewhere though, aren't you?
I mean, there has been better defenders, but yeah, I can't really argue with it.
Okay, so I'm gonna then move to his mate next to him, which again, people are just going to look at this team and go, "Who are you? Why are you picking these players?" Because obviously, I ignore rivalries. I'm looking at players as talents, not who they play for. Otherwise, what I mean, we're never going to have anyone from a rival club playing in your team, are we? Virgil van Dijk, fantastic. You can't discredit him for what he's done for Liverpool. He was fantastic for Southampton for what they had.
For Celtic as well.
Yeah, and don't forget he came from Celtic to Southampton. Not many players, do fit, and sometimes they just fall away. Van Dijk, he went. I think there was only like 6 million from Celtic, maybe a bit more, but obviously nowhere near the price he went to Liverpool for. But again, you got to look at his stats. His strength, his positioning, it's all fantastic. And he's, again, I'm looking at, I've got a lot of players obviously that can take set pieces, so it's obviously going to be a bit of an argument in my team. But he's dangerous in set pieces as well.
I mean, there's always the argument: would he have done it back in like the 90s or the 2000s? Would he be the player that he is today, playing against the strikers that they had back then in the midfield? But the game these days, it's different. I mean, we've seen it over the years since the Premiership started.
Mm-hmm.
It's evolved so much, and it's not all about that defender that's just going to throw themselves at everything. A lot of it is positioning, because there's a lot of the time you only had 4-4-2. You may have 4-3-3, or 4-4-1-1. Where now you've got that many different formations and players that will switch and everything. You've got to have somebody that's got that tactical brain on them that can play with anybody next to them and tell them exactly where that player is going to end up being. Van Dijk is very good at that. Would I have put him in my team before a lot of the others? I probably wouldn't.
That draws a different opinion, and which is good about what we're doing here today. Is we've gone opposite. It'd have been a bit of a boring subject if we both picked the same players, in a team, because effectively we're just talking about the same players, aren't we? And, I mean, it's not fun then. But I watch it as a whole, obviously, and I appreciate players no matter who they play for. I might, during the game, when we play the derby and it's Liverpool at Everton, I will obviously say shit. I hate Van Dijk, but that's just football, and he's playing against Everton, but he's fantastic. And if you want to say about playing in the 90s to the early 2000s, was a bit more rough and ready, I think he'd fit in that era. I think he's strong enough that he would definitely fit in that era. I think he's got the tools, and he probably still would stand out in the early days of the Premier League to But I'll move on. I'll digress with that. I'll move on to his mate, Big Rio. And there's other reasons why I've chose these two together. Obviously, Rio Ferdinand, he broke through, didn't he, at West Ham?
Yeah.
He went to Leeds, had that fantastic World Cup 98. But he played a bit more of a DM role, didn't he? He came out and showed his skills with a ball.
Yeah.
The skills of a ball that Rio Ferdinand had was fantastic. What he could do with a ball was really, really good. And also intelligent positioning, and getting in the way of obviously strikers, wingers, whoever was coming up. He was always in the right positions, like Van Dijk. But why I've picked these two is obviously my football manager brain's 10 to the dozen, isn't it? So I'm always looking at how these two would play together. They're both very good at coming out with the ball. You've got to just look who's in front of you then. You know what I mean? It opens up space, and I think it's always good to have, obviously, especially in this modern day, a defender that can come out from defence and break midfield a bit and draw people into him. So positionally, the likes of Rodri and Paul Scholes would have space to manoeuvre then inside the centre park. But I liked Rio Ferdinand. I think it was fantastic. For United, unbelievable. Next to Vidic, as you had in your team. But you, again, could have gone Rio Ferdinand, John Terry. I think they both were brilliant in their peak, and they were fantastic for England. Just do it. The defenders, I think, a lot of youngsters who were wanting to break through in football should emulate, really, because they brought everything. They had everything. There was strength, there was positioning, but they scored goals, and important goals as well. And it wasn't just a header from a corner or a free kick. They used their feet as well. They could score goals with their feet. And a good passer of the ball as well. I think, defenders now need to be a good passer of the ball. Like a goalkeeper needs to be a good passer of the ball. So obviously I've looking at the modern with the past as a tactic with what I've picked. But I digress again. I go to my left back, who I will obviously argue the point where you have picked Ashley Cole. I picked the man who I thought was the best left back in the Premier League, and that was Mr. Leighton Baines. I love Leighton Baines. The guy only just in the last 2 seasons has been taken over by Trent and Andy Robinson in goals scored and assist by a defender. Leighton Baines, maybe not as great at defending like Trent, but going forward was monstrous. He had a left foot, I think most defenders on the left wing would die for. He could hit a free kick. Didn't score many, you know what I mean, like all the time. Never scored a free kick at Goodison Park, by the way, which you would have thought he would have, but never did. Scored a lot of penalties, yes, but he was really good with penalties. But his position when he attacking, the moment that ball went off his left foot, pretty much was a fantastic cross or diagonal that Leighton Baines could pick out. Was brilliant every time.
Was it Wigan you got him from?
And that's why we scored. Yeah, I think it was about 7.5 million.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot, was it?
No, because he was going to Sunderland when Roy Keane was the manager, and he wanted to come to Everton, obviously, and then obviously I think we must have got wind of that. Obviously, we were interested in him, and he chose us over Sunderland, and the rest is history. It's a shame the lad never won a trophy. Like Seamus Coleman being your right back is an staples of Everton when they had a solid team of David Moyes players in such high regard, but they've got nothing to show. Trophies, they have goals and they have the games you can watch back, but they haven't got medals, they haven't got trophies that you want to celebrate the player with. But Leighton Baines to me was the best left back I ever watched. I was lucky enough to see his last ever goal at Goodison Park before he retired that season, and that was we went out to Leicester on the Carabao Cup in the quarterfinals on penalties, but we were about to lose 2-1 in that game, and the guy hit a 30-yarder and just smashed it right in the top corner. And that was no set piece, Brady. That was all in play. But I loved him, his commitment. Obviously, he's Everton's under-18s manager at the moment, and he's doing a decent job. He's Mr. Everton as well, as Jamie Vardy, as you alluded to, was Mr. Leicester City. But I love Leighton Baines. I'll move on from that because I could probably sit here and speak about Leighton Baines all day long. My midfield, obviously, I picked Paul Scholes because I think Paul Scholes is the best midfield. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because people are going to say Gerrard or Frank Lampard.
No, I picked Scholes over Gerrard and Lampard any day.
I just think that he was the best passer of the ball. He had magician when the ball was to his feet. His IQ was fantastic.
I mean, that goal that he scored against us, where we had Mr. Jogger Pants and goal.
Oh, when he hit it first time, didn't he? Off the bar and in.
Yeah, centre the goal, and the keeper didn't even have a clue where the ball was going. And that's just and just his general passing. He made a 50-yard pass just look easy, like he was just passing it 10 yards. It was just absolutely ridiculous. What he could do with the ball for somebody who was nothing against England or anything, was from the English game. You'd see that sort of passing in sort of like the European leagues. You never really saw it over here. It was sort of short 10, 20, maybe 30-yard passes by other players, but he was pinging them from anywhere. He'd be on the edge of United's box, and he'd see the striker halfway in the opponent's half, and he'd put it literally right on their toe. It was just ridiculous for what he could do.
Yeah, and you remember rightly, Xavi came out many, many years ago and said Paul Scholes was a player that he admired, and he would have loved him to play with him and Iniesta at Barcelona. Couldn't imagine what Xavi, Iniesta, and Scholes in the midfield three would be like. Terrifying if they allowed each other to have the ball.
Ridiculous.
But Paul Scholes was someone, I think, and he was a small midfielder, don't forget. He wasn't tall. Yeah. He was a small little ginger lad. But he was aggressive, which sometimes obviously gone into bother. But as you say, the passing of the ball, the manipulation of the ball, I always think football IQ is one of the massive things that midfielders need, because they need to know when to go forward, when to come back, when to play out of trouble. The man next to him obviously does that in abundance. But he was fantastic. And he could strike a ball. It wasn't just a goal against Villa that stands out. There's the goals against Barcelona when United knocked them out of the Champions League in semi-final, and it was just his goal. He was stunning. And don't forget, he retired. He came back because Ferguson needed him, and he still looked really good.
And I think he could do a lot of the stuff that he could do because he had Roy Keane next to him.
Yeah.
Roy Keane, we all know what Roy Keane was like. We all know what he's like now. I mean, if you haven't seen the video of what he said to the Ipswich fan the other day.
Yeah.
Roy Keane was just literally, he'd stand in front of everything, and Paul Scholes could just play his game.
Yeah.
Knew Roy was always going to be there, whether it be behind him, in front of him, to the side. Scholes, for the age he was when he started doing what he was doing, and in that era of it was still the hard knock game, I mean, that line, you'll never win anything with youngsters. You'll never win anything with a bunch of kids.
Mm. Well,
I mean,
Ferguson proved that you can. And you got to look at the players that came through, in the 90s that ended up being, prolific and had fantastic longevity in football.
Yeah.
But I'll move on as time is ticking on. You mentioned Roy Keane, Rodri. Not as I would say personality out there like Roy Keane. He's not an angry man, is our Rodri. Obviously, the winner of the Ballon d'Or this year,
which I agree with.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of people do. They do say Vinny Jr. should have won it, but it is what it is. But what you say about Roy Keane does and made Scholes tick. I think Rodri is a man that can do pretty much everything in that midfield, and you've seen it with the misses, obviously, that City have now without Rodri being in the team, and you can see how they've struggled for a replacement for a person that can gobble up the ball, he can move it.
6 games without a win, And
a bit more than that now, but they reckon that.
I mean, City's problem is if Rodri's out, they've got nobody to replace him. They thought Calvin Phillips could do it, but he obviously can't. Rodri is, for what he does for City and what he does for Spain, I mean, yeah, he gets forward, he gets the goals. It's like Vincent Kompany was.
Yeah, but obviously
just plays his football. Knows his role, knows what he needs to do. He's very good at being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, yes.
He also knows how to do the dirty side of the game.
Yeah, but that's why when we've spoken about Rodri plenty of times on this show. I feel like, Rodri has got that old school English defensive midfielder sort of personality trait in him. And that's very good with the the European style of football. And it mashes really well together. But I've spoken about Rodri a lot of times, so I'm going to move on because otherwise I'm just repeating myself of all the niceties I can give Rodri. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to make this very quick now because we've only spoken about Henry, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about Henry. But the three men obviously I will. Andre Kanchelskis in the early 90s was one of the most scariest wingers to ever play in the Premier League. I'm not just saying this because he played for Everton, but he did the same for United when he was there. It was madness how we ended up buying him. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff going on at United, and they ended up coming to us.
United were always your feeder club.
Yes, probably. But that's probably one of the better ones we got out of them. But he was terrific, Brady. He was electric fast, could finish. You only have to see what he did in his first season at Everton, scored a 2 against Liverpool at Anfield and obliterated their left wing, absolutely obliterated it.
For a player that nobody had ever heard of at the time, and I don't know anybody that would have heard of him because he was just plucked out of nowhere, really. I used to watch him, and every kid was the same. Tried to do the same on the footy pitch, and you couldn't. I mean, that guy, especially when he first broke onto the scene, no defender knew how to deal with him because they were used to just the old style midfielder or striker just running at them. But the stuff that he was doing, they just didn't know how to deal with it. Because did he go to Celtic after you as well?
No, into Fiorentina.
And it was just ridiculous for the time he came in. It was just something nobody had ever seen before. And he wasn't scared to do it. It's like he'd been there for years. He was already settled in. And I think it was down to Fergie saying, go play your game. Unless I tell you otherwise, you play your game.
Yeah, and I think he pretty much embodied that when he came to Everton. I'll move on to the next two. I'm not going to go into too much about these two because these are two well-known. I think we both know what Mo Salah does for Liverpool. My pick of that, again, is what he can do with a football is fantastic. Consistent goal scorer. He's a threat. No person in this world would ever turn down a Mo Salah. He's a machine.
Another mess up by the great one there, wasn't it?
Chelsea. Yeah. And then I'll go to Wayne Rooney. Very brief on this because I spoke about Wayne Rooney last week. Love the player. I saw him grow at Everton. I saw him before he made his debut at Everton. Me and Stuart were over the moon of the talent we had in front of us. At the time, obviously, we weren't in good position. There's a lot of story behind why Wayne Rooney left Everton. Unsure who is to be believed in that scenario, but I'll forget that itself. We'll think about the player, what he did for United, come back to Everton, Gutted he left again, but then he went to America, came back, Derby. He's managed Derby, he's managed Birmingham, managed DC United. Now at Plymouth and not doing so well. But as a player, there's no better than Wayne Rooney, really, of what he could have done with a football, his intelligence, his strength, his speed, the amount of different style goals he scored. This is a player I think a lot of people should emulate, not him as a person, but just as a football player and what he brought to the table and what he was like. Because he was
I
a
remember
monster
when
when he
we
was
used
a
to
kid.
speak about him when it was always Villa and Everton in like the youth cups and everything. And you said to me, keep your eye out for Wayne Rooney. He's going to be something special. And then we watched a game at your house. Was it Everton Arsenal when he scored his first goal for you? His first senior goal.
Yes, that was when the header from Gravison and he took it down fantastically. Just turned and scored that absolute banger. And he always said he wanted to score before he turned 17. And what a goal!
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard the commentators all wow about it, but unbelievable player. Someone obviously I'll cherish because I watched him. I don't think he's an icon for Everton because he just wasn't there long enough.
No,
it's a shame really, but again, it is what it is. You lose players, and you move on. And David Moyes did move on this following season because we got 4th. But anyway, that is my team. Comments below who you thought was the best, who picked the best team, me or Brady. What don't you agree with? Do you agree that we could have picked better players, in the past or current? Just comment and we'll pick it up from there. Right, Braids, as this is an hour and 21 minutes long and we have talked quite a fair bit, I'm just going to do some housekeeping. So I want to thank the Sports Social Network. As you can see, they've got definitely more than 500 partners and counting. Fantastic place to, if you're a podcaster, that definitely help you, publish yourself and get along there. And they do help you with clips. Me and Stuart have got a couple coming tomorrow, and then Stuart's got one with Rob Van Dam from his wrestling podcast coming on a Monday. So make sure you check out them. They're fantastic and they're supportive and they help us, really get our names across. And any advice we have with Sports Social, they're always there, via email. And they're fantastic partners to be, partnered with. Again, I'm not going to go through all our socials. You know where we are. Football Then and Now is on Twitter, X, if you want to say, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all audio platforms. So if you've missed this or you've come in late, this will be up, I think, by tomorrow morning or maybe tomorrow afternoon. So you can listen to this again with me and Brady. Or again, you can watch the video once this is finished and rewatch it from the start. Brady, it's fantastic catching up with you in this way because we haven't really sat down and spoke football because we used to just get on each other's nerves because it used to be Everton and Aston Villa and those games were intense, fantastic, and then we wouldn't talk to each other after the game. But it's been a pleasure having you. Oh no, yeah, flipping hell, you scored little pot-headed goals past me, but it's fantastic to have you on. I definitely want to get you back on next time when Stuart's here and we can have a freeway. A non-sexual way when I mean that. But yeah, I think there's some stuff I think you're very handy with the past, topics that we will bring up, especially, the FIFA and the Football Manager style games. Obviously, we're going to go back to that at some point because there's so many to pick from and so many experiences. And Pez, obviously, is one I really want to talk about. So I'd definitely bring you back on that. That's because I beat you all on that constantly. But yeah, it's fantastic to have you on. Is there anything you'd like to say before we finish?
Always a pleasure dealing with you two lads. But yeah, I think next time, I think we need to do I think the best of our teams 11.
Okay. that can be done. 11. 11 can be done. 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 11 can be done.
Yeah, or if there's anything that any of the viewers think that we should do, like team-wise, or anything they'd want to see us do, then I'll leave it in their hands. But
yeah, I agree. Well, that is episode, and Brady. We'll catch you, I think, next week when Stuart's back for episode 38. We do have a topic, but we haven't disclosed if we're going with it yet. So you'll be known once we post that we're going live. You'll know the topic by then. Cheers, Brady. Thank you very much for coming on, mate. And I'll see
always
you
a
next
pleasure.
week.
Football then and now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the